Hello and welcome to the day one of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass session being organized by ACCA Pakistan for the June 2019 exam. I am Kashif Kamran, your tutor for this session. Now, just before starting on with the proceedings of the day one of this Practice to Pass session, I would first like to formally introduce myself and the structure of this Practice to Pass session over the next 5 days. Now, firstly, in terms of my tutor profile, I am Kashif Kamran, a fellow chartered certified accountant. I am associated with teaching the ACCA qualification for over 11 years now. I am currently associated with the Bani School of Accountancy, which is a platinum approved learning provider of ACCA in Karachi, Pakistan. My core specializations is the Advanced Audit and Assurance paper and the Strategic Business Leader paper. This is my sixth Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass session, which has been organized by ACCA Pakistan. And that gives you a wonderful opportunity to all of you that you can access my previous Practice to Pass sessions on the ACCA Pakistan channel on Vimeo, where you can get hold of all my preceding webinars. My students over these 11 years of teaching the AAA paper has attained several Pakistan-wide and global positions within the respective exams. Now, I am here today to start on with your preparations towards the June 2019 exams. Just under a month remaining now, 3rd of June is your exams, and this is an ideal time to start preparing ourselves for the AAA exams coming in the first week of June. Now, through this practice to pass session over the next 5 days, I will be guiding you about how you should be going down preparing yourself for the June 2019 exams. And I must say that within the students who are participating in this practice to pass session, there are two sets of students, right? Firstly, those students who are appearing in this exam for the first time, and there might be students who are repeating this paper. So for both of you, this session is equally important as this session will facilitate you towards your preparation for June 2019 exams. Now, just before starting on with the structure of this session and the day one, there are some housekeeping instructions. First of all, during the course of the session today and over the next 5 days, if you have any questions, firstly, you should hold your question because there might be many things which will be discussed in the session. Now, in the last 15 minutes of the session, when you think some of your queries are still unaddressed, then you can raise your questions in the last 10 to 15 minutes. And I will be more interested in answering your questions towards the last 10 to 15 minutes of every day, rather than I'll be putting focus on your question and answers coming during the session. So that's one very important housekeeping instruction. Secondly, there is a WhatsApp group which you can join for practice to pass, and any queries which remain unattended, I can then answer the queries on the WhatsApp group. The admin will share the links of the WhatsApp group with you, and it would be more appropriate if you can email to the admin at preparetopass@acccaglobal.com, so the admin can send you the link of the WhatsApp group through the email. Okay, with those housekeeping instructions, let's start on with the proceedings, and let's start on the proceedings for the day one of this practice to pass session for June 2019 exams. The agenda. On the day one, which is today, I will be exploring with you the topic of risk assessment. On the day two, tomorrow, I will be exploring the area of evidence and procedures. On the day three, I will be exploring ethical, professional, and quality control issues. Then on the fourth day, I will be focusing on other assignments, and on the fifth and the final day, I will be exploring the topic of reporting. Now, this agenda will help you in planning the practice to pass session very effectively. And before you enter into the live session, you exactly know which topic will be discussed today. So you can do your homework before you come into the session so that you can be facilitated over the course of the session. Okay, now just before starting on with the day one, let's first see the objective of this practice to pass session. Obviously, just like the previous practice to pass sessions, this practice to pass session has the same agenda, that is to enable you or facilitate you to pass the AAA exam. Now, over the next 5 days or over the next 15 hours, I will be exploring some very important guidance areas from very important sources, which will be guiding you on the path which can bring success for you. So the ultimate objective of this session is to enable you to pass this paper, and is to enable you to know what are the basic problems which students do in a AAA paper, and at the end of the day that results into a failure. So you should not be repeating them when you appear for your exams on the 3rd of June. The pass rates. Now, if I look at the last 5 exam settings and the recent one, which was in March 2019, the pass rates is the pass rates you're looking on is the pass rates which has been the history of this paper. We have never seen exceptional pass rates to the AAA exams, and normally a range of 30 to 35% is considered as the ideal pass rates for this paper. In the last exam sitting, though, it fell to 30%. And even in the September 18 exams and in the March 2018 exams, it has fell to 30%. So there are instances, and there are recent instances, when the pass rate has gone to very lowest levels, 30. Now, what you need to ensure that obviously when the pass rate is at 30%, that means there are problems with students. Uh, that means students are not finding the ideal way to pass the paper, or students are struggling to pass this paper. Now, as with any strategic optional exam, including the AAA paper, the pass rates are within the same region. They're not extraordinary higher. So that means for every strategic optional paper, including the AAA paper, you need to have a very organized strategy. If you don't have an organized strategy towards the AAA exam over the next 4 weeks, these pass rates is giving you a very strong message that there is a tendency of students who struggle to pass the AAA exams. So if you want to assure that you are within those 30% students, then there has to be a perfect strategy towards your June 2019 exams, and that's exactly what I will be focusing more specifically on every day over the next 5 days. So, and I'll be finding reasons on a topic to topic basis, that what are reasons why student fail in a risk question, what are reasons why student underperform in a evidence question, or in an ethical question, or in a reporting question. So I cannot just tell you the reasons openly, accumulatively, but I'll be taking on reasons of failures individually on a day-wise basis, and then we can accumulate the reason of failures onto the last day, finding a top 5 reasons why students fail in a triple exam. So it's just the start of the journey, right? From the first day today. Now, the last important thing before I start on with the day one agenda is the format of the paper. Now, if any one of you is giving the AAA exam for the first time in June 2019, you should be very familiar with the format of the paper, which was changed in September 2018 exams. This will be the fourth exam sitting since the format of the paper has changed from September 2018 exams. We now know that the AAA paper consists of 3 compulsory questions, and all of them has to be attempted. There are two sections in the paper, and you can see those two sections on your screen. There is a section A and then there is a section B. The section A consists of one 50 marks question and the section B consists of two 25 marks question. So that's in all the three questions you are attempting in the 100 marks paper. Now, we need to find that what exactly is the composition of the question 1, and then what exactly is the composition of a question 2 and a question number 3. Now, just to do that analysis in a very proper manner and to guide you, particularly those students who are appearing in for the first time into this exam, that what sort of a picture you should have in front of you when you're attempting a first question, a second question, and a third question. Let's realize that very practically. Okay, now right in front of your screen is a Word file which I will be using on a consistent basis on over the next 5 days. And at the end of each day, I will be putting this Word file on the WhatsApp group so you can be facilitated if you missed anything during the course of the session. Now, the very first thing where I need to spend some good time on just before starting on with risk as the first topic. When you look at the paper for 100 marks, you need to think very practically and very realistically that how you will be going about it in terms of your preparation. There are three questions, right? Question 1, which is for 50 marks. Question 2, which is for 25 marks. And then a question 3, which is for another 25 marks. How is the syllabus allocated between the three questions? The first question is a question which is at the planning stage of the audit. So examiner has put the paper in the right structure. So examiner is starting the first question at the stage of planning. At the stage of planning, when you look at the first question consists of some static areas, which is a must part of the first question. And then there are some areas which can be on and off. Now there are some specific areas, right, which is a regular feature of the first question. The first question consists of risk assessment, and this risk assessment is the static part of the first question. So this is a must part, right? This is a must part of the question number 1, risk assessment. You cannot find a question 1 without this topic. This is a must part because that is the most important thing the auditor do at the stage of planning. Then in the first question, you might find something known as procedures. Procedures are on and off. There are many exam settings where you will find procedures in the first question. And ideally, there are again many exam settings where you will not find procedures in the first question. So that's an on and off topic which the examiner tends to give you in the first question. But these are the procedures which are on accounting treatments. So these are procedures on the accounting treatments given in the case study. The next, ethical and professional issues, has been a very regular feature of the question number 1, but again, this is an on and off topic. But has been a very regular feature of the question number 1 that the examiner tends to give some marks to ethical and professional issue in the question number 1. So that is like an on and off topic, right? Ethical and professional issue, that examiner tends to keep some marks for this topic, ethical and professional issue, in the first question. Then the last thing, in the first question, examiner tends to ask some knowledge areas. Knowledge areas like, for example, fraud, knowledge areas like opening balances, knowledge areas like using the work of an expert, etc. So again, this is on and off, right? Not a regular feature, but on and off, you get something like that even in the first question. So it's quite a diversified question, right? And one thing is for sure that when you look at the first question, something which is a static part of the first question is risk. And that's exactly what we are doing in the first day today. Because the moment you open the exam question, the very first thing you are doing in a case study is risk. So I hope you all realize that the first question is a very diversified question consisting of risk, consisting of procedures, consisting of ethical and professional issues, and considering of knowledge areas. And then we know that the first question consists of a briefing note where we have 4 professional marks. So that's an ideal composition of the first question. Now, when you look at the second question is set at the stage of completion, at the stage of finalization of audit. So this is something important, that this question is set at the stage of the finalization of audit or at the completion of the audit. So something which is a regular part of the question number 2 is that you get a question on reporting, audit report. Because audit report is something the auditor do at the completion stage of the audit. So audit report is must and is a static part of the question number 2. You cannot get a question 2 without report. That is a must part of the question 2. September 18 exams, December 18 exams, and the March 2019 exams, all of them had reporting in the question number 2. So that shows that this is a question which is on the completion and reporting stage. An examiner has specified that in the syllabus guide. What else can be in the question 2? There can be a question on evidence, because evidence is something, review of the working papers, review of the working papers. That is something, if you have practiced the past papers prior to attending this practice to pass session, you must have seen questions on evidence where the examiner says, evidence you should expect to find in a review of the working paper file. And that is a question which is formulated at the stage of finalization when the manager is reviewing the working paper file. So being a manager looking at a working paper file at the finalization stage of the audit, just to assure whether you have gathered sufficient appropriate audit evidence or not. So a question on evidence is on and off in the question 2. And in the last exam sitting, March 2019, we saw a question on evidence in the question number 2 along with reporting. So that is quite an on and off feature, right? Getting a question on evidence in that. The last thing, the question number 2 can still have ethical, professional, and quality control issues. But again, this is something which is on and off. A very important thing mentioned by the examiner says that ethical and professional issue can come in any question and can come at any stage of the audit. So you can expect ethical and professional issue can be in any question. It can be in question 1, it can be in question 2, it can be in question 3, because that is the most open question in the AAA paper. An examiner says you can expect this question anywhere in a 100 marks paper. And interestingly, it can be in all the 3 questions. So that is such an important area, right? So expecting a question on ethical and professional issue as part of the question number 2. Then the last area, question number 3, is basically a question which is formulated on a topic known as other assignments. But this is not a regular feature. But mostly the question will be on other assignments, because examiner has specified that. But you will not see other assignments coming in every exam sitting. That's not possible. But yes, uh, among the 4 exam sittings, twice you can see this topic. So other assignments is a mainstay topic of question number 3. What else can come in question number 3? Again, ethical and professional issues, because examiner says I can put this anywhere in the paper. So ethical and professional issues can come here. And then what else can come in the question number 3? Any knowledge area? Knowledge areas like corporate governance, the bigger knowledge areas. Money laundering has already come in December 18 exams. Corporate governance, money laundering, uh, auditor responsibility for laws and regulations. So areas like such can be part of the question 3 as well. So knowledge can come into the question 3 as well, along with other assignments, ethical, professional, and quality control issues. So this is how the paper is structured. So you should first know how things come in 100 marks paper, so you know which areas you will be preparing more effectively. Now, if you look at this exercise, which I've done for you in the last 10 minutes, this justify that there are 5 very important areas of 100 marks paper. And that is all what has been realized here. Look at the 5 days of this practice to pass session. And these are the 5 areas which is part and parcel of your 100 marks paper. So I will be spending time on each of the core area. Okay, so that is it, right? In terms of the structure of the paper and in terms of how you should be approaching this format. So section A consists of a 50 marks question, and I've just guided you what can be part of the question 1. And then I've guided you on the question 2 and question 3, which is in the section B. So you have a better idea of the structure of the paper. Okay, now that all brings us to the day 1. The first day of this AAA Practice to Pass webinar, and we are preparing ourselves for the June 2019 exams. Now, on the first day of this risk assessment exercise, I have done risk assessment in each and every Practice to Pass since March 2018, which you can see on the right hand side of your screen. In March 18, in June 18, in September 18, in December 18, and in March 19. You can get ample practice from these previous webinars, but I have chosen yet another different question this time, which I have not done in any of my previous webinar, right? So this time I'm doing a September 18 question number 1, which I have never attempted before in any of my previous webinars, so that you get yet another practice of a very new question. And if you want to access more questions, you can see the previous webinars on ACCA Pakistan channel on Vimeo, and you can then have a good practice of many more questions. Now this time I purposely choose audit risk to be done in the session today. And the reason for that is that in my previous webinars, I have done all the techniques. I've done the risk of material misstatements, I've done the audit risk, I've done the business risk. But again, choosing audit risk for this session is only because this is important for your June exams. There's a very high likelihood of audit risk for your June 19 exams. And this is the weakest area. That is another reason, right? So being a weakest area and having a potential to come in the June 19 exams, I thought it's high time that I should spend time in June 2019 webinar yet again on audit risk by taking into account a different question. Right, so the day 1 agenda then is to do a question on audit risk, and I've chosen a very latest question, which is September 18 exams, which is the first exam where the format of the paper was changed to all compulsory paper. This will also facilitate you in how to go about with question one, because there are so many students who literally does not know how to go about with question number one. Either they spend more time on question one, either they don't know how to read question one, or either they don't know how to plan the question number one. So I purposely choose the big question one of 50 marks to do an exercise on audit risk, just to guide you not just about audit risk, but also to guide you about how to read and go through the first question of 50 marks. So you will be getting a double benefit of the September 18 question number one in the session today. Okay, now let's start with audit risk, which is the mainstay topic of the day one. Now, when I look at the audit risk, first of all, are there any specific resources by the examiner on the topic? And the answer is yes. In front of your screen, you can see the hyperlinks of the two articles, which are written by the examining team and which will be helping you in preparing your topic audit risk. Now, a lot of time, students have no idea of the recent articles. The student have no idea about which articles to read and which articles not to read. So you don't organize yourself. That is a big problem. For every topic you are preparing for June exams, first assure how would you be preparing this topic? What is the source of preparing this topic? Now, just before I come to that and start on with audit risk, now, firstly, if you're preparing for a topic known as audit risk, which is the first day agenda, right? Or something known as risk of material misstatement. Now, when you're preparing yourself for audit risk or risk of material misstatement, first of all, you should think about how should I be preparing? Now, if you ask me this question, and if I am preparing myself for the triple exams in June, I would say, okay, I have to do a topic audit risk, and I need to go down preparing this topic so I can excel in this topic in my exam paper. So the very first thing I will do as a student is I will first see whether there are any articles on this subject by the examining team. And I'll go to the ACCA website where the AAA articles are kept, and I will see, are there any articles on risk? I will download those articles and I will read them properly so that I can gather knowledge from the examiner perspective on the said topic. Now, once I read these articles, I know exactly what the examiner expects. What is the boundary of the examiner? How would a question come on this topic? So whether there are any articles written on the subject by the examining team, that's the first source of learning, right? So my first source of learning is the articles. Second, what is the examiner criticism on this topic? Why student underperform? Because I don't want to repeat that in the June exams. So if I am preparing myself, I would see why student do an audit risk question so badly. Why is the examiner so critical of the audit risk question? So I would be spending time on examiner criticism when I'm preparing myself. Now, examiner criticism is there on the ACCA website. And how you get the examiner criticism? Through something known as an examiner report. And there is an examiner report of every exam sitting. So I have no idea how many times all of you spend time on examiner reports. Honestly, if I conduct a survey and I'll ask you, how many of you read examiner reports as like something very consistently? I think majority of you will say, no, we don't read that. Is that true? If I ask you a question quickly, how many of you read the examiner report? Or you have a habit of reading examiner reports? If you can just quickly give an answer, yes or no, with your chat window. See, there are more no answers, right? There are more no answers that you seems not to be reading it when that is something so essential. That is something so essential. So I would first read the article because the article will set the boundary. Then I will be reading the criticism of the examiner so I know what I should do and what I should not do. Then the third thing I will be doing after the examiner criticism, right? And then thanks for that feedback. Now back to the session. Third thing, when I'm preparing myself, marking scheme. How much mark each risk is worth in exam paper? Now, a lot of time, perhaps you will agree with me, and even those students who have flunked and appearing back in the triple exams have no idea of the marking scheme. You have no idea whether a risk is worth 2 marks or a risk is worth 3 marks or a risk is worth 1 mark. And you go into the exam hall having no idea how many risks should I be finding. Should I divide them by 1? Should I divide them by 2? Should I divide them by 3 marks? Now see what is the situation. You might be writing more when you should have written less. So this is a big problem. How many of you keep yourself updated on the marking schemes? That's another question to you. How many of you keep yourself updated on marking scheme? How many of you know the marking schemes very clearly when that is published by ACCA, right? And that is available on their website. So the most important thing is that you should know the marking schemes. Where are the marking schemes? That is in the answers published by ACCA. So answers published by ACCA. You will go to the last 2-3 pages of the answers, and on the last 2 to 3 pages of the answers, you will see the marking scheme given. So you exactly know what is the marking scheme of each topic. So third, now after I know the articles, I know the knowledge, I know the criticism, I know the marking scheme. Now that is the time I should sit down and start practice. And I should ideally practice 3 to 4 questions on audit risk from recent papers. Now what is the meaning of the word recent papers? You are all appearing for 2019 exams. So what is recent for 2019 exams? 2018, 2017, 2016, and maximum 2015. That is recent. I cannot do outdated questions. 2011, 2012, 2013, I have to do more recent questions. So I understand how things have changed in AAA, how things have matured in AAA. So are you getting the formula right? How should I be preparing for a topic like audit risk? And this is a question you should be asking yourself for every topic. And this is an ideal formula for every topic. Articles, criticism, marking scheme, and then do the practice. And now one last thing. When you do practice, you should ideally identify the points from the case study and match your points with the points of the examiner in the marking scheme. A lot of time, a student have a tendency of reading the examiner answer, which brings them under stress. What you should do when you're reading a case, keep underlining the case, right? That this is the risk, this is the risk, this is the risk, keep underlining. Now, after like 30 minutes, you might have underlined many risks in the question. Now go down and see the examiner marking scheme on audit risk and see how much risk are identical. Have you been able to pick a risk which the examiner has also picked? So you are not reconciling the answer, you are reconciling the points of the examiner. And where you find the points of the examiner? In the marking scheme. So I'll say, okay, I picked up this risk and the examiner picked up this risk. Wonderful. The way of writing is different. If I write something, you write something, the examiner writes something, all three of us will have a different way of explaining the same point. If I say revenue recognition is a risk, now how I write revenue recognition as a risk, how you write revenue recognition as a risk, or how the examiner write revenue recognition as a risk are three different answers, because each one of us has a different way of explaining. But if I picked up a point revenue recognition and I go to the examiner marking scheme, right? And the examiner has picked up a point on revenue recognition. So I will be very happy that I picked revenue recognition, examiner picked revenue recognition, matched. Now, how I write and how examiner write is different. Is that everyone clear on that perspective? So should I first identify my point and match with the examiner point? Or rather, I should match how I should write the point? Can I get your quick answers? Should I first identify a point and see whether that reconciles with the examiner point in the marking scheme? So if my point matches the point of the examiner, will I be happy? And then can I write my own answer rather than seeing the examiner answer? So what is the problem with students? They don't reconcile the point, they reconcile the answer. Is reconciling the answer important, or is reconciling the point important? Give me your answers. Is reconciling the point important, or is reconciling the answer important? Exactly. And can my way of expression and your way of expression differ? If 5 people write a same answer, will it be the same answer? So I hope you're getting that track right. And that's a very important track for each one of you appearing for the June 2019 exams. Okay, perfect. Let's come back and start on with the phase of practice. So how should I be preparing? Articles, examiner criticism, marking scheme, practice, and then ideally identifying the points from the case study and match your points with the examiner marking scheme. How much points should match? If 50% points matches in the first practice, in the first go, that's wonderful. Your percentage will improve, right? Your percentage will improve. So in the very first practice, if you match the examiner points by 50%, wonderful, right? Gradually it will become 60%, gradually it will become 70% before you enter the exam hall. So a 50% reconciliation in the very first question, you should be motivated, right? You should not be demotivated. So that's how you are going down with this. And finally, write the answer. That is something very important, right? Write the answer in a time restriction. This is very, very important. When you are practicing at home, keep a timer with you. Set a time on your smartphone, like 30 minutes. Suppose you're doing a question of 20 marks. Now 20 marks means 40 minutes, multiply by 2, ideally. So I am doing a question of 20 marks. So I'll set a timer of 40 minutes on my smartphone and I'll start writing the answer. When the timer buzzes, I will stop and see how much I have written in 40 minutes. And I should stop there. Then I do another question. Then I do another question. Then I do another question. You will realize that with each question you practice, your time management will improve. But you have to do the time management with a time restriction. If you are not doing practice with time restriction, you are not doing justice with yourself, because that is the problem you face in the exam hall. Is it important that you do a time restricted practice at home? If I get your answers on that, is it important that you do a time restricted practice at home? So will all of you be setting a timer when you practice now for June 2019 exams? And actually, how many of you have a habit of doing that? Have any one of you have done that before? Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. If any one of you are still was doing that in the previous sessions, but will you now make it a habit of setting a timer on your smartphones? We use smartphones almost throughout the day, but have we ever made a productive use of a smartphone? So will we set a timer now and do a question and stop when the timer buzz? That's really important, right? To improve your time management for the AAA paper, because a lot of student complains about time management that we didn't complete the paper, right? So yes, you can multiply that by 1.8 minutes, or you can multiply that by a round of 2 minutes. That's wonderful to start on with the practice phase. Okay, so that's my answer. How should I be preparing? So is everyone clear about this question and answer? How should I be preparing? And that is exactly the same for every topic. Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. How should I be preparing? Okay, now I'll try to realize that in the next 2 hours. Articles, I'll try to realize examiner criticism. I'll try to realize marking schemes, practice, matching the point with the examiner point, and time restricted answer. I'll do all of them with you in the session today so that you know that this is possible. This is possible. You can do it. So that's one. Let's go back to the presentation. So there are 2 articles, right, which has been written by the examiner, and I will be doing a demonstration of these articles when I start my session today. Okay, audit risk now. Just a quick refresher of audit risk if you have forgotten what an audit risk is. Rather, you should not have, but even if you have, let's do a quick revision of what an audit risk is. When you get a case study on audit risk, you know basically that audit risk is a combination of two things. If you are unsure of that, let's just have a quick brush over on that situation. When you're attempting a question on audit risk, you know that audit risk consists of two things. Number one, audit risk is equal to ROMM into detection risk. Now, when I am reading a case study on audit risk, so that means in a case study, I can find risk of material misstatements, and if you have practice in a question on audit risk, the entire case study is based upon ROMM, because ROMM is the maximum part of the case study. Detection risk will hardly be 1 or 2 in the entire case study, because that is a very minor part of audit risk. But when the examiner makes a question on audit risk, what is the substantial part of a question on audit risk? The substantial part of a question on audit risk is ROMM, and the minor part of the question in the whole case study is the detection risk. So what will you be finding as a substantial part in the case study? This is a substantial part in the case study. And this is the minor part in the case. Hardly 1 or 2 detection risk in the whole case study. An examiner has given the examples, right, of detection risk in his article. So if you want to know what are detection risk, read the examiner article. Examiner has given wonderful examples of what are detection risk, and exactly what examiner gives as examples can come in your exam settings. So when you attempt a question on audit risk, ROMM is a substantial part of the case and detection risk is a minor part of the case. But you should find detection risk when you are attempting a question on audit risk, because that will send a very good impression to the assessor who's checking your paper. Okay, so how to go about it? Now, when I look at ROMM, which is a substantial part of audit risk of material misstatement, and that is the point when I need to take you to the examiner article, which has already been shared with you as the resources for the day one. See this article in front of your screen. Exam technique for advanced audit and assurance. There are 5 articles written by the examining team on exam techniques. If you go to the website, AAA website, you will see the top 5 articles are the exam technique articles, the first 5 articles on the website. Download them, read them. They are must. They're must. The first 5 articles are must. So when you look at the exam technique article right in front of your screen and you go down it, you will see the heading Part 2 Risk. So this is the Part 2 article which has been written on risk, and I would be doing an exercise with you so that you realize how important the examiner article is. Now you go to the exam hall and you have no idea of how to write a risk of material misstatement answer. And you say, I'm very puzzled, I have no idea how to write an answer, I'm very confused, I have seen examiner answers, they're very lengthy, etc. Have you ever imagined that this article on risk tells you how you should be writing the risk of material misstatement? And that's exactly here. Can you see this blue box in front of your screen? And it starts with, when describing an ROMM, an effective approach is to use the following steps to construct your answer. Now see, you cannot say, I have no guidance. The problem is you're not making a proper strategy for AAA. See, your examiner is telling you how you should be constructing an answer. So you cannot say, I have no idea how should I be constructing my answer. So examiner is saying, if you want to construct an answer on risk of material misstatement, this is how you should be constructing your answer. Examiner is giving you the steps to construct your answer. So what steps? See, number 1 step, examiner is saying the very first thing you should do when you're identifying a risk of material misstatement, number 1, calculate and conclude on the materiality. Calculate and conclude on the materiality of the issue where sufficient information is available. See, that is very important. Calculate and conclude on the materiality where sufficient information is available. So examiner is saying you cannot calculate the materiality in all cases. You need to calculate materiality where sufficient information is available. So that's important. Now then the examiner is telling you something very important after. Examiner says a mark will be given for a correct and relevant calculation of materiality with an appropriate conclusion. So how many marks will you get for calculating and concluding on materiality? 1 mark. So examiner is saying, I'll give you a mark for a correct and relevant calculation of materiality with appropriate conclusion. This will be awarded. See this very important line. This will be awarded once per issue, and materiality marks will be capped in an exam question. Now, do you know how many marks you have for materiality in exam paper? You're appearing for exams on the 3rd of June. Do you know how much marks are capped in a question 1 for audit risk for materiality? If I calculate a materiality, I will get 1 mark. But what is the maximum capping marks for materiality? See, no one is giving me the right answer. One is saying 5 to 6, one is saying 3. Only one student came with the right answer, 4. The marks are capped to 4. So how many materialities can I find in a whole question? 4. Because examiner says for every materiality you calculate, I will give you 1 mark. But what are maximum marks for materiality in the whole question? 4. So can I find more than 4 materialities? Give me the answer in yes and no. Can I find more than 4 materialities in one question? Can I find more than 4 materialities in one question? No. Examiner is saying only 4 marks are for materiality. Farjad, only 4 marks for materiality. Jeevan and Farjad, you're still giving the wrong answers. Maximum marks for materiality are 4. So how many materialities maximum I can calculate in the exam paper? 4. If I calculate the 5th materiality, will I get mark for that? If I calculate the 5th materiality, will I get marks for that? No, because the examiner is saying the maximum marks you have for materiality are 4, right? So now Farjad and Jeevan, you're coming on the right track, right? So the very first thing, back on my Word file, if I am attempting a question on risk of material misstatement, what should be the first clue? Number 1, examiner is saying determine and comment on materiality. Examiner is saying where possible, and 1 mark per materiality with proper comment to a maximum of 4 marks. Now see, if you have not read the marking scheme, how would you know the marks which are capped? In an exam, you're wasting your time finding the 5th materiality. You're wasting your time finding the 6th materiality. Right? So you need to be very specific for that, right? Now the second thing, then in the same article, the examiner is saying briefly describe the relevant financial reporting requirement. See the word briefly describe the relevant financial reporting requirement. How many of you briefly define the relevant financial reporting requirement? We have a capacity of writing as much accounting treatment as possible. Is the examiner saying briefly describe the relevant financial reporting requirement? And how many of us write a brief accounting treatment? Some of us write half a page, 6 lines, 8 lines, 10 lines. Is that true? If I just raise this question to those students who are repeating their AAA paper, do you write a lot of accounting treatments? Lengthy accounting treatments? So what is the examiner saying? Briefly write the accounting treatment. I hope you understand the word briefly here. And the examiner is saying something very important for all of you, where you have the most frequently asked questions. See this line. No credit is awarded for the accounting standard name or numbers. How many of you write the name of the accounting standard and the number of the accounting standard? Examiner is saying I'll give no credit for the name of the standard and the number of the standard. This is the frequently asked question, right? That should we write the number? Should we write the name? Examiner is saying, no, I'll not give you the name and number marks. So are the marks for the name and number of the standard, or is it for to write a briefly writing the accounting treatment? Will I get marks for numbers, number and the name of the standard? No. Will I get marks for the accounting treatment? Yes. So what's the second thing the examiner is saying when I'm attempting a question on risk of material misstatement? Examiner is saying briefly write the accounting treatment. And I'll be demonstrating that once I do the practice shortly. Briefly write the accounting treatments. Charles, I'll just be coming to the question number 1. So I'll be guiding you about exactly how much time you should be spending on the question number 1. So briefly write the accounting treatments. No reference to name and number of the standard. Name and number of the standard. Okay, number 2. Number 3, let's see what is the examiner telling me, us about the number 3rd point. Number 3, relate the risk in the scenario to the accounting treatment. Relate the risk in the scenario to the accounting treatment. That is something very important. You are doing a question on risk. Relate the risk in the scenario to the accounting treatment. What does that mean? Relate the risk in the scenario to the accounting treatment. Risk in the scenario to the accounting treatment. That means how many risks are there of an accounting treatment? Either it could be a risk of no disclosure given, risk of no disclosure given, no, risk of no disclosure given, or a risk of incomplete disclosure, or a risk of wrong valuation, or a risk of wrong recognition. When you look at an accounting standard, what is the risk in an accounting standard? Something is wrongly recognized, one risk. Something is wrongly valued, second risk. And something is wrongly disclosed, third risk. Do you all agree these are risk in within an accounting standard? Yes, and even a wrong classification. That's perfectly right, Aaron. A wrong classification. So what are risk in an accounting standard? Either the risk in the accounting standard is a disclosure, is a recognition, is a valuation, or is a classification. So examiner is saying risk in the scenario to the accounting treatment. Are you understanding the risk now? Aaron, you asked for examples, right? Are you clear on that? The examples. So examiner is saying risk in the scenario to the accounting treatment. So in a scenario, it might be a risk of disclosure. In a scenario, there might be a risk of valuation. There might be a risk of recognition. There might be a risk of wrong classification. Right? And now the final thing. That's not ending the examiner article yet. Examiner is saying the 4th thing you have to do to get marks is illustrate the impact of risk on the financial statement. Illustrate the impact of risk on the financial statement. Impact of risk on the financial statement. So the 4th thing the examiner is saying that you have to write the impact of risk on the FS. Now, what's the impact of the risk on the FS? Number 1 impact is understatement. Number 2 impact is overstatement. So are you getting the point of examiner? What should we do first in a question on ROMM? Just now quickly give me an answers. What should we do first in a question on ROMM? No, the very first thing we will do in a question on ROMM is what? Should we find the materiality? Okay, perfect. How many maximum marks we have for materiality? 4. Wonderful. What is the second thing we will do after we find the materiality? After we find the materiality, what's the second thing we will do in a question on ROMM? We will work on the accounting treatments. Okay, will we write the name of the accounting standard? No. Will we write the number of the accounting standard? No. Perfect. What is the third thing we will do in a question on ROMM after writing the accounting treatment? We will relate the risk, like a risk of disclosure, a risk of recognition, a risk of valuation. So we will specify the risk, right? How many risks can be there? Disclosure, recognition, valuation, classification. So we will specify the risk. And what is the last thing we will do in a question on ROMM? We will tell examiner the impact. Now, impact can be something understated, impact can be something overstated. And what if the disclosure is not given? If the disclosure is not given, then what is the impact on the financial statement? Now nothing is understated and nothing is overstated. If there is no disclosure given, then nothing is understated and nothing is overstated. So what is the impact on the financial statement? Then I'll say financial statements are materially misstated due to no disclosure. So either I write an understatement or overstatement, but when something relates to a disclosure, so I'll tell examiner that the financial statements are materially misstated due to no disclosure or due to inadequate disclosure. Now see, have your examiner guided you about writing an answer on ROMM? Has your examiner left you without guidance? Now honestly tell me, among all of you who are attending this live webinar, how many of you have read these 4 points in the examiner article this way? Be honest, right? How many of you have read these 4 points from the examiner article this way? See, that's so clear. And how many of you have been puzzled about ROMM? Reading the examiner answers and seeing, oh, examiner writes that lengthy answer, examiner even write the number of the standard and the name of the standard, and the examiner writes a big accounting treatment. Now, is not the same examiner telling you not a big accounting treatment, a small accounting treatment? So why does the examiner writes a big accounting treatment? Because he wants to educate you. Why does he writes a number of a standard? Because he wants to educate you. So how many of you had these questions in mind? Examiner writes big accounting treatments. Examiner writes a number of the standard. Examiner writes a very big answer. Is the same examiner telling you that you need to write the 4 points in one answer? So are you clear on this guidance, everyone? And have you realized the importance of reading the article and how to read the article? Okay, that's perfect. So once I do an answer with you shortly, and once you get down with writing an answer in the session today, will you keep these 4 things in mind? Materiality, accounting treatment, risk in the scenario, and the impact. And how many marks we will get for each risk? Each ROMM with all the above 4 features is equal to 3 marks. Each ROMM with all the above 4 features is 3 marks. Now suppose you're doing a question in an exam paper, but it does not have a materiality. So of the 4 features, there are only 3 features. Will I get 3 marks? No, listen to my question again. If I am attempting a question in an exam paper which does not have materiality, rather it have a treatment, it has a risk, and it has an impact. Examiner is saying if all four are present in one answer, I'll give you 3 marks. But out of the four, if only three are present, if only two are present, will I get 3 marks? No. Then how many marks will I get? 2. So each ROMM with all the above four features, I hope that line is clear to everyone. 3 marks if all four features are present. So materiality is present, accounting treatment is present, the risk is present, the impact is present. So that whole paragraph will give me how much marks? 3. And if any of the four is missing, how many marks will I get? 2. That's wonderful, right? So that means in an exam paper, each ROMM with is worth 2 marks if any of the above feature is missing. Is that clear to everyone? Read the last point, 5 and 6. Just go through the point number 5 and 6 on your screen. Each ROMM with all the above four features is 3 marks. Each ROMM is 2 marks if any of the above feature is missing. Is that clear to everyone? I'm giving you an example. Give me the marking scheme. The company does not have an internal audit department. Will I get 3 marks? Will I get 2 marks for this? The company does not have an internal audit department. Will I get 3 marks? Will I get 2 marks? 2. Wonderful. The company has obtained a loan. The company has obtained a loan. Is there a value of loan in my statement? Is there a value of loan in my statement? The company has obtained a loan. Is there a value of loan? But can I write an accounting treatment of loan? Can I write a risk of loan? So how many marks will I get? 2. But if I say the company has obtained a loan of a $20 million, so are you getting the point here, everyone? So can you realize in an exam context which situation is giving you 3 marks and which situation is giving you 2 marks? So if you want to complete your answer quickly, what should be your priority? Finding a 3-mark situation or finding a 2-mark situation? 3 marks. So will you make it a priority in your exam paper in June 19 to find a 3-mark situation first, rather than wasting time on finding a 2-mark situations? Okay, and the final answer. How many maximum 3-mark situations you can find in an exam paper? If you remember something I told you just 10 minutes ago, how many 3-mark situations you can find in one exam setting? Maximum 4. Wonderful answers from all of you. And why maximum 4? What's the logics behind that? What are the logics behind finding just 4? Exactly, because the materiality marks are capped to 4. So can I find more than 4 materialities? Can I find more than 4 materialities? No. So that means how many 3 marks equation I can solve in an exam paper? I can solve 4 3 marks equation. I hope everyone is clear on that, right? There is no confusion within the attendees who are taking this as a live session. Okay, that Ali Zan, that will be the practice phase, right? Just wait for your answer coming in the practice phase, because a lot of things will be mitigated through the practice as I start attempting the September 18 question. Okay, so that's one thing, right? Of the examiner article. Now back to my presentation. So if you look at my presentation and you look at this paragraph, which I have taken from the examiner article, this is a paragraph which I took from the article of the examiner, which I was just showing you, where the examiner says that detection risk in the case, there can be situations which give rise to detection risk. So be careful about those situations. Examiner says one situation where you can find a detection risk is a new audit client. And this is a very common situation, right, for detection risk. A new audit client. And you know there is a detection risk, right, on a new audit client. What is the detection risk in a new audit client? Why there is a detection risk in a new audit client? Quick answers. There is a detection risk in a new audit client because we have less knowledge of business. And due to the less knowledge of business, there is a detection risk, right, in the new audit client. Okay, number of locations. Why there is a detection risk in number of locations? Can anyone give me quick answers to that? Number of locations, 50 locations, 70 locations. What is the detection risk with number of locations the client is operating from? Exactly, good answers. Because we cannot visit all the locations. Shazad Ali, that's a wonderful answer, right? So, can the auditor visit all the locations? No. So, a location which he does not visit, is there a detection risk? The location which he fails to visit, or a location which he does not visit, is there a detection risk? So, can you relate detection risk with a number of locations? Wonderful. The last situation given by the examiner, use of websites. You go to a company which is using websites for sales. What is the detection risk? No, e-commerce is a business risk, right, Jake? What is the detection risk? That's good answer, right? Farhan and many others. Linda, no audit trail. No audit trail is the right answer because when something is done through computer, that is paperless. And when something is paperless, auditor does not get appropriate evidence. Is evidence important for the auditor? Is this evidence important for the auditor? Yes. In a computerized environment, is the evidence a problem? In a computerized environment, is evidence a problem? Yes. So will that increase the detection risk for the auditor? So these are three examples. These are not my examples, right? These are three examples of the examiner. And if you can find a detection risk in the three examples here, that means your thought process of a detection risk is going wonderful for your June exams. So now is everyone clear? Should we go down with a drill of the question now? Just a quick recap. When you are attempting a question on audit risk, which is right in front of your screen now, you need to find an ROMM, and all of you know there is a 4-step process for ROMM, right? And then you need to find out detection risk. Now, have I given you both the sides in my last 15 to 20 minutes? Is everyone clear on ROMM? Is everyone clear on how to go about ROMM? And is everyone clear on the marking scheme? And is everyone clear on the capping of marks for materiality? And is everyone clear on the examples of detection risk? The three examples given by the examiner in the article. And last thing, will you be reading the examiner article which I shown you on the screen and is being given to you as a resources? And you can download this from the website as well, right? Will you read this article? Part 2 risk in front of your screen. Good, wonderful. Okay, so that means we are structured now, and we are structured with the very first thing is to start the practice phase now. So that was exactly my question to you. How should I be preparing? So first thing I should be preparing is the articles. So see, has article helped me in preparing this topic audit risk? Has the article helped me in preparing this topic, audit risk? Yes. Now, what's the second thing to prepare for this topic? Examiner criticism. We are attempting a question on September 18 in the session today, right? And all of you will have this question because that has been shared with you, and you will be having your revision kits and past papers with you. So you can just open up the September 18 question number 1, which I will be starting shortly in the session today. But just before starting on with the question, let's see the criticism of the examiner. Now, do all of us know the marking scheme of this question? And the only last thing left now is to do the practice and to see the criticism of the examiner. So we're just inching towards the start of the practice phase. Okay, now let me show you the question here. In front of your screen, you can see the September 2018 exams. And you are appearing on the June 2019 exams. The same looking paper will be right in front of you, but how many of us know how to read the paper, how to go about the paper, how to spend time on the paper? So much problems. Honestly, the student fraternity, I believe, just because they don't have the right strategy in place, many times we fail the exams. So if you improve upon your strategy, you learn strategy, you polish up your strategy, you can bring success to yourself in the upcoming exams. Detection risk is 2 marks, right? Josna, 2 marks for detection risk. Okay, now we're looking at the first question. Now, just prior to the first break of this session, which will be coming in the next 15 minutes or so, 15 minutes is a good enough time for reading and planning of the first question. And let's see what exactly is in the first question just before attempting the answer on audit risk. Now, when you see a question paper of AAA, right now, be just focused, right? Drop your question answer sessions for 10 minutes. Just concentrate how you go down with the question 1 in exam context. How much of a reading and planning time we have for the question 1? Ideally 15 minutes, 1-5, right? We have 15 minutes of a reading and planning time for the question number 1. How many pages the question number 1 can be on average? If you have seen September, December, March papers, average 6 to 8 pages. 6 to 8 pages, right? Can be the question number 1. So how many pages are we reading? 6 to 8 pages, which is basically the question 1 of the AAA paper. And how much time we have for that? 15 minutes. Now that's exactly in front of your screen. The rule number 1, when you start to read the question number 1, the first paragraph will tell you who you are. The first paragraph will tell you who you are. The first paragraph will tell you which company are we auditing. So if I read the first paragraph, which is right here in front of your screen, this first paragraph here will just tell me that I am a manager, you are a manager from Bisson and Company, a firm of chartered certified accountant responsible for the audit of the Eagle Group. Your firm is appointed to audit the parent company Eagle and all of its subsidiaries, with the exception of Lynx Company, a newly acquired subsidiary located in a foreign country, which is audited by a local firm of auditor, Vulture Associate. Now, if I am doing a question on audit risk, right? And at the back of the mind, I know that there is a detection risk in the audit risk question. Examiner is telling me that I am the auditor of the Eagle Group with the exception of one subsidiary, Lynx Company. So Is there a detection risk associated with the newly acquired subsidiary? Is there a detection risk associated with the newly acquired subsidiary? And what's the reason of that? Why there is a detection risk with a newly acquired subsidiary for me being the auditor of the group? Exactly. Aaron is giving the right answer. Yes, because there are different auditors. Am I the auditor of the new subsidiary? Am I the auditor of the new subsidiary? No. Is there a different auditor? So will it have a different way? Will the other auditor have a different way of performing audit? Will he have a different methodology to audit? So will that increase my detection risk? Have I been the auditor of the new subsidiary, then the detection risk would have been lower. But because I am not the auditor of the new subsidiary, so am I unaware of the new subsidiary? Am I unaware of what's happening in the new subsidiary? So lack of awareness, and am am I the auditor of the subsidiary? So there are two reasons, right, why the detection risk is here. Number one reason, lack of awareness. I have no awareness about the new subsidiary. And number two reason, I'm not the auditor. So when I'm not the auditor, how will I detect something? So the detection risk will increase because I am not the auditor of the newly acquired subsidiary. So automatically the detection risk will increase. So that's bringing us to the first point. Because Lavish, it's part of the group. I'm responsible for the group audit, right? And that subsidiary will be part of the consolidation. I'm the group auditor, Lavish, right? So the subsidiary will ultimately become part of the group. But because I'm not auditing the subsidiary, anyone else is auditing it. So that increases my detection risk. Okay, now is the first paragraph important then? Apart from telling me who I am, and apart from telling me what is the name of the company, can I get some important information in the first paragraph in each exam setting? So the first paragraph can give me some important information, right? And from here, I got to know some very important information, that one of the subsidiary is not audited by Bison. It's been audited by some different audit firm. Okay, now something important. When you go down the intro paragraph for the first question, you will see, when you go down the first paragraph, you will see the exhibits, which is the most important thing of the question number one. Now, many times student does not know the way of reading the exhibits. We know question number one has exhibits 4 to 5. Over here we have 5. It could be 4, it could be 5, that vary from session to session. Now, exhibits are like annexures. When someone emails me or you, with the emails we have attachments. True, Amar? When someone emails me, with the emails we have attachments. So exhibits are what? Exhibits are attachments. So, and in every attachment, there is an important information which will guide me through the writing of the answer. Let's see what is in the exhibit. In the exam, this is a rule of thumb that the first exhibit has to be the email you got from your partner. That is perfect, because every time the first exhibit will be the email of the partner. And what is in the email of the partner? The most important thing. In the email of the partner, what's the most important thing? Requirements. Requirements. Where will I get to know the requirements of the 50 marks question? The requirements of the 50 marks question will be in the email of the partner. So I should read the exhibit 1 on the next page in the exam paper, to know what are the requirements. So what is in the email? Quick answers. What's in the email of the partner? The requirements. Wonderful. Number two, background information about the group. So if I want to know something about the group, where will I get the information about the group? In the exhibit number 2. So if I want to gather information about the Eagle group and I want to know something about the Eagle group, where is the information about the Eagle group? In the exhibit number 2. In the exhibit number 3, I have the group financial statements. So if I want to see the financial statements and I want to see what has increased or decreased from the last year, so where will I get the information of the increase and decrease in the last year? Where will I get the information about the financial statements? I have to read which exhibit? The 3. So does every exhibit has a specific purpose, or should I jumble them up and read? Is every exhibit unique? Yes. The first is the email, the second is the background information, the third is the group financial statement. The fourth, determination of the goodwill arising on the acquisition of links, the new subsidiary. How much goodwill arose on the acquisition of the links company? If I want to know the goodwill which arose on the acquisition of links, where should I go in the case study? I should go to the exhibit 4, right? So exhibit 4 only have one information, only the goodwill arising from the acquisition of links. Will I get any other information from exhibit 4? No. Will I get information about the goodwill in the exhibit 4? Any particular goodwill? Any particular goodwill? Yes, which is from the new subsidiary. Perfect. And the last exhibit. The last exhibit contains the audit strategy document of the vulture. So if I want to see the audit strategy document of vulture, who is vulture? You are a manager of Bisson and Company. You are a manager of Bisson and Company, right? Then who is vulture here? Yes, perfect. The vulture is a subsidiary auditor. So if I want to see the subsidiary auditor strategy, where will I get the strategy of the subsidiary auditor? In which exhibit? In the exhibit 5. So now let's do a quick recap. How many exhibits I have in this question? And every exhibit have a definite information? Yes or no? Is there a mixture of information in every exhibit? No. So will you do the annotation? How many of you do annotations in the 15 minutes? Reading and planning time, right? See, I am doing annotations in front of the screen. You never do scribblings. See how much scribbling I have done just on the first page, underlining and circling. Annotations is such an important thing when you read a case study. How many of you have a habit of doing annotations when you're reading a case study? Okay, Bright is saying I do. Sambal is saying I do. Okay, that's good. That's good. Most of you still responding with I do. Shazad Ali saying I don't. But if you don't, please, any one of you who don't, please make it a habit. Reading and planning time is for annotations. If you don't do annotations like the one I'm doing in front of the screen, what is the purpose of reading then? After 15 minutes, you will have a neat and clean question paper. And what will you do with the neat and clean question paper? So now the final thing before we just get to the break and start with audit risk. Now, once you read the first page is just telling me who I am, and the first page is telling me the exhibits, which is in the case study. Now, on the second page, I will get my first exhibit. Can you see the first exhibit on the page number 2 here? And the email of the partner is very important, right? Because the email from the partner is which will tell me what exactly how should I be going about my 50 marks. Can you see the email of the partner? And over here, the partner is saying in the email, I require you to prepare a briefing note for my use in which you. So is that a standard format of the AAA paper that every time we have to make a briefing note? Is that true? Or is it like a strategic business leader paper where every time the format will change? Is it like a strategic business leader paper where the format will change every possible time in every question? So is briefing note a static format of the triple exams? The right answer is yes. So triple exams only have a briefing note and you have to write an answer in briefing note. That's the way of presenting the answer to AAA exams. So we are preparing a briefing note. How many things we have to do in a briefing note? Can you see A, B, C, D? A, B, C, D. So how many things are we doing in this briefing note? 4 things. So that's a lot of things, right? We have to do in for 50 marks. Let's go one by one. When you read the first requirement, it says evaluate the audit risk. So the very first thing in the exam context I'm concerned about is that I have to evaluate the audit risk first, number one. And for 1 minute, I will think audit risk. There is a 3-mark audit risk. There is a 2-mark audit risk. Is that true? The moment I circle audit risk in the exam paper, will I recall audit risk has a ROMM and audit risk have a detection risk? Will I recall that? Will I recall that in an ROMM, there is a 3-mark ROMM and there is a 2-mark ROMM? So the moment you circle audit risk, can you recall the knowledge here? ROMM multiplied by detection risk? And can you just recall the marking scheme when you circle the word audit risk in exam paper? That's very important, right? Then you go down. Examiner then says, you should use the analytical procedures. Use the analytical procedures. So that's the second thing examiner wants me to do. Audit risk, use the analytical procedure. So that's the second thing the examiner wants me to do. In which exhibit I have the financial statement? Which exhibit have the financial statement? Anyone remembers that? Which exhibit has the financial statement? 3. So if I have to use the analytical procedures, which exhibit I have to go? So in the exam, can I write it over here? Use the analytical procedure. Can I write in the exam paper 3? Which exhibit I have to go for analytical procedure? 3. Then after the full stop, can you read this line carefully? You are not required to consider audit risk relating to disclosure. And in the exam hall, you write risk relating to a disclosure. For example, there is a related party in the question, for example. And you write a risk of a disclosure relating to a related party. Will the examiner give me any marks for that? Suppose there is this company has a lot of segments and I need to give a disclosure of the IFRS 8. I need to do the segmental reporting in the disclosures. If I write IFRS 8, and I write segmental information, which is basically a disclosure, will I get any marks for that? How many times we ignore this thing in the exam paper? You are not. And even the examiner is saying you are not, we still do it. Is that true? Examiner says, even if I tell a student not to do something, he do that. So can I find a risk arising from a disclosure here in this question for 24 marks? No. Is everyone clear with that? Okay, just that is how many marks I have for the requirement A, 24, right? And how many things I have to do for 24 marks? Audit risk and use of analytical procedures. Now, I'll be guiding you after the break, which is to come in the next 5 minutes, where I will be guiding you how many marks should I keep for audit risk and how many marks should I keep for analytical procedure. And then I'll drill the answer with you so that you know the way of writing the answer even. Okay, look at the second requirement. In the second requirement, I have to do the audit procedures on the goodwill. And where was the goodwill given? Audit procedures on the goodwill, on the new subsidiary. Examiner is even telling you that here, shown in the exhibit 4. So for the requirement B, should I directly go to the exhibit number 4 rather wasting time on reading the other exhibits? Then in the C requirement, can you see the examiner is saying exhibit 5? So if I want to solve the requirement C, which exhibit will I go to? Will I waste time? Will I waste time reading the whole question for the requirement C, or will I just go specifically to exhibit 5 to make my C answer? Whatever is being asked in the C requirement, right? Will I go to the exhibit 5 for the C requirement? Yes, and see the last one. After considering the request in exhibit 2, so there is another reference of exhibit 2 here. So in order to solve the requirement D, which exhibit should I go to? 2. Now, is the examiner telling me some clues here? If I have to do the analytical procedures, which exhibit will I go to? Be quick in your answers. If I need to do the analytical procedures, which exhibit will I go to? 3. Okay. If I need to do the procedures, audit procedures on goodwill, which exhibit will I go to? 4. Okay. If I need to do something for the C requirement, which exhibit will I go to? 5. And if I want to do something for the D requirement, which exhibit will I go to? 2. Now see how wonderful that is. I just go to the next page quickly. Suppose here, exhibit 2. Which requirement exhibit 2? Basically, exhibit 2 was basically the requirement for part D. I write D here in the exam. Okay, then I go to the next page. I saw the financial statements, exhibit 3. The moment I see the exhibit 3 financial statement, I write AP, analytical procedures. AP, analytical procedures. In which part I need to do the analytical procedure? In the part A. See? Then you go down on exhibit number 4. Can you see the exhibit 4 on your screen now? Which part is the exhibit 4? Part B. I need to make procedures. B. And then can you see the exhibit 5 coming on the last page here? Sorry, exhibit 5 is just over here. Can you see the exhibit 5 on the same page? For which requirement I'm using the exhibit 5? For C. Can you do that in exam paper? That just circle the exhibit and link that to a requirement. Now I know exhibit 5 is for C. I know exhibit 4 is for B. See, are these annotations helping you later in the exam paper to link an exhibit with a requirement? Then up, the financial statements. I have to link the financial statements with analytical procedure, requirement A. And then on the top, I need to use the exhibit 2 for the requirement D. So that will really help me to segregate the case study. Now, just one last thing quickly, and getting to the break number 1. Right after the break, I'll start the answer. So within the break, if you can read the question for September 18, I think all of you must be having the revision kits or the past papers. You can easily read the September 18 question number 1 within the break. So right after the break, I will start writing the answer. and I'll assume you all have read the question paper. Now, just one last thing. In the September 18 question 1, we have 4 requirements, right? Requirement A, B, C, D. And in total, how many exhibits we had? We had 5 exhibits. The first exhibit, will it be used later in the exam paper anywhere? The exhibit 1. Exhibit 1 will be used later in anywhere in the exam paper? Yes or no? No, because exhibit 1 contains what? Requirements. So exhibit 1 will be used in the rest of the question? No, because exhibit 1 contains requirements. So the first exhibit, okay, out of the 5, the first contains the requirement. So how many exhibits I'm left down with now? 4 exhibits which will link to case. Is that true? The 4 exhibits will have a link to case now. So can I do that in the exam paper? That first exhibit is the email, which will give me the requirements. The remaining 3 or 4 exhibits, whatever are in the exam paper, should I link these exhibits now to the case study, the 4? And have we done the linkings? The A was linked with exhibit 3. The B was linked with exhibit 4. The C was linked with exhibit 5. And the D was linked with the exhibit 2. See, have I allocated the exhibits to the requirements? Yes, first exhibit is always the requirements, right? Will that linking help you in exam paper? Honestly, yes or no? Will that save your time to choose the information, pick information? So will this annotations help you? Have you got some glimpse of reading and planning time of the first question within the limitation of this 3 hours? So I purposely choose the question 1, right? Just to give you insights. And this is not yet the end of the session, right? We're just going on to the first break now. Um, I'll be resuming back at exactly 10 p.m. The Pakistan Standard Time. And from the 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time, the only focus is to solve the question 1. And you will learn many important criticisms of the examiner in the last 1 hour of the session. Again, within the time limitations, there are many questions which is humanly impossible that I answer during the live session. So please put all these questions on the WhatsApp group, and I will be answering them for sure in the next 24 hours. Okay, time for break. We are resuming back at 10 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time for the answer to September 18. And you have to do something in the break, right? You have to read the September 18 question number 1, exhibit 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, welcome back after the break. Now we are attempting the question 1 of the September 2018 exam, focusing on audit risk, so that what we just learned prior to the break, that audit risk consists of ROMM and detection risk, and the marking scheme of 3 marks and 2 marks are being practically implemented so that you have a very clear idea of how to go about a question on audit risk. Now, it would be wonderful if you have read the question during the break, because within the time limitation, I'll be skimming over the questions, very selective parts, because I need to focus more on the guidance to write an answer, because that's where the criticism of the examiner is. Now, when you write an answer for the first question, you need to write an answer in the format of a briefing note, right? The very latest exams, which happened in March 19, and right in front of your screen is the examiner report of the March 2019 exam sittings. You have to make a habit of reading these examiner reports, because this is such a wonderful document which give you a deep insights of the problems the students are facing. When you look at the March 2019 exams, in every exam sitting, the question number 1 is on risk, and you have to prepare a briefing note, right? So examiner give us a very specific comment here. Question number 1, March 2019 exams, and the examiner made a very specific comment here about the briefing note, which is such a wonderful comment by the examiner to gain some very important knowledge. See what the examiner mentioned here. I'm just reading within the orange box. Just keep your focus strong and quick. There are 4 professional marks available in the question number 1, and all of us know that, right? There are 4 professional marks in the first question, which we have to gain through. And how are we taking these 4 professional marks? With 1 mark awarded for the following. How is the breakup of the 4 marks? Examiner is saying there are 4 marks in the first question, and you will get 1 mark for a suitable report style heading. I'll just be telling you that, because the briefing note starts with a heading, a brief introduction, because the briefing note has a brief introduction, a structured and a well presented answer, a structured and a well presented answer, A, B, C, D, and a clarity of explanation. So examiner is saying you want to get 4 marks. First, there has to be a report style heading. Secondly, there has to be a brief introduction. Then there has to be a structured and a well presented answer. And lastly, there has to be a clarity of explanation. Then the examiner says all the candidates should be capable of achieving a minimum of 3 professional marks. So 3 is what examiner says student mostly score. It should be noted that a brief introduction is required. It should be noted that a brief introduction is required, and time should not be spent on writing half a page introduction or lengthy conclusions. How many times students do that in exam paper? They write such a big introduction of a briefing note. So examiner is saying a brief introduction is required, and time should not be spent writing half a page introduction or a lengthy conclusion. Conclusion and introduction can be just 3 to 4 lines. So are you getting the message of the examiner? So is the examiner encouraging us to write a big introduction? No. Is the examiner encouraging us to write a big conclusion? No. For a structured and a well-presented answer, simple headed paragraphs. So is the examiner encouraging to use headings in the answer? Examiner is saying it should be a simple headed paragraphs. So is the examiner saying there should be headings in a paragraph? are enough to score these marks. So is the examiner encouraging headings and paragraphs? Examiner is, right? Candidates need not to be concerned with spending time underlining or numbering headings. So is the examiner saying you should underline the headings? Should we underline the headings? No. Should we number the headings? No. Should we have a heading and a paragraph? Should we have a heading and a paragraph? Yes. Okay. Last line. Last 3 lines. For clarity marks, the marker will consider whether they understood the candidate response and discussion satisfied the question requirement. Candidates will not be penalized for poor spelling or grammar. So will we be penalized for poor spelling or grammar? No. But is everyone sure how to get 4 marks? A report style heading, a brief introduction, a well-structured answer, and a clarity of explanation will give us the 4 marks. So is this examiner report very insightful? Have you understood the importance of an examiner report? This is the latest examiner report where the examiner wrote a complete paragraph on just how to get the 4 marks. So will you make a habit of reading examiner reports like this? Are they worthy of reading? Okay, now let's go down and see the answer. 4 marks. Now I have shared this answer with all of you, and I'll be skimming over the answer and writing some extra things as well within the answer, because this answer has been shared with all of you as part of the resources, but I'll be doing the guidance on this answer. Now see, examiner was saying there has to be a heading. So can you see a heading over here, briefing note number 1 on the top? Now just follow the structure very carefully. After the briefing note heading, can you see to? Can you see from? Can you see RE? From where this to from RE came from? From the exam question. In the exam question, can you see this? The email of the partner. Can you see to from subject in the email of the partner? Am I responding back to the email of the partner? So when I'm responding back to the email of the partner, I will still have the to from, but see the subject. The subject will become RE. I hope you have replied to an email ever. If you have replied to an email, when someone emails you, there is a subject, but when you reply to this email, that subject becomes RE, reply. So to from subject, the subject will become RE. I will not change the subject, because if I get an email of a person and I respond back to the email of a person, I've never changed the subject of the email, right? I hope all of you know that. So we never change the subject of the email, right? So to from subject, the subject will become RE, and that's exactly what I done on my Word file here. To from RE to the partner. The name of the partner was given, so I used the same name of the partner. From the manager, the name of the manager was not given. I was amazed. I was conducting an international mock exercise last time, and some of the students submitted me the script for mock checking. The student wrote his name as the name of the manager. Is the examiner giving me the name of the manager? No. So should I write the name of the manager? Should I write my own name as manager? I really feel sad for student fraternity, that what sort of mistakes are you doing at such a strategic level paper? So the partner name is given, right? The manager name is not given. Then Eagle Group Audit Planning, that was basically the subject. The same subject came over here. And Then the examiner was saying that you need to write a brief introduction. Can you see a brief introduction given here in my briefing note here? Can you see the brief introduction? Was that must to take the 4 marks to write a brief introduction? Now, what you write in the introduction, you basically write the summary of the 4 requirements. Why are you writing this briefing note? That is the introduction. So are we writing the briefing note for 4 things, A, B, C, D? And when you read my introduction, you will see that I have written the introduction on A, B, C, D, that these are the 4 things we have to do when we are writing the introduction. Okay, then can you see the order after the introduction? What was the first thing we have to do after the introduction? Requirement number A. And what was the requirement A about? Evaluation of audit risk. So can you see the structured answer? Examiner was saying it has to be structured. So the very first thing we have to do was to evaluate the audit risk. But was the examiner telling me that you have to use the analytical procedures? Was that part of the 24 marks question that I have to use the analytical procedure? Now comes the most important thing. How many times have you used the analytical procedures rightly in exam paper? And how many times you know how many marks are there for analytical procedures in exam paper? Do anyone knows how many marks we have for use the analytical procedure in exam paper? Over here, how many marks will I have for using the analytical procedure? Examiner was saying use the analytical procedure. How many marks will I allocate to use the analytical procedure? Over here, 5 marks. Where is that written? In the marking scheme of the examiner. Not 6, 5. Use the analytical procedure. How many marks will I get for using the analytical procedure? 5. How many marks I have? 24. 24 minus 5. How many marks are left? 19. Now see this. I need to evaluate the audit risk and I need to use the analytical procedure, right? And how many marks I have in cumulative? I have 24 marks for this. Now, how I got to know that use the AP is equal to 5 marks? This is given in examiner marking scheme. So examiner says there are 5 marks for analytical procedure. So how many marks I have for audit risk? I will deduct 24 minus 5 is equal to 19 marks for audit risk. Now, under the audit risk, is there a 3 marks audit risk? And is there a 2 marks audit risk? Right? How many 3 marks risk can I find maximum in the exam paper? How many 3 marks risk maximum I can find in the exam paper? 4. So that means into 4, how many marks will I take for 3 marks risk out of the 19? 12. And then how many 2 marks risk I have to write to make my marks to 19? How many I left with after writing the 12 marks answer? 7. So 7 divided by 2, I should be writing 4. So how many risk for how many marks I will take from here? 8. So see, how many audit risk are you writing for 19 marks? How many audit risk are we writing for 19 marks in total? Respond quickly with the answers. 8. 4 3 marks risk and 4 2 marks risk. And I'm getting my 19 marks done in the exam paper. And I'm taking 5 marks for analytical procedures. Is everyone clear with the breakdown of the 24 marks? Okay, that's perfect. Okay, now let's see When the examiner says use the analytical procedure, Joyce, that's given in the examiner marking scheme, right? So examiner marking scheme says there are 5 maximum marks for analytical procedure. So you know that when you enter the exam hall, right? So out of the 24 marks, we have 5 marks for analytical procedure. The remaining are 19 marks, and the 19 marks are divided into 3 marks and 2 marks. There are some risks which will give me 3 marks. There are some risks which will give me 2 marks. Okay, now what exactly the examiner means when he says use the analytical procedures? The examiner is giving me 5 marks for that, but how will I take the 5 marks? How will I take the 5 marks? See my slides. See in front of your screen now. Utilizing the analytical procedure when specifically asked for have 5 maximum marks. How to gain those 5 marks? What examiner expects from student in terms of utilizing the analytical procedure? This is the weakest area of students. And how should a student present the answer for 5 marks? So let's clarify that. How will I get the 5 marks? How to gain the 5 marks? What examiner expects from student in terms of utilizing the analytical procedure? And how to present the answer, right? Let's see how to go down with 5 marks. See my answer here. Can you see a table of the 5 ratios here in front of your screen? Will this table of 5 ratios give me 5 marks? No, absolutely no. Will this table of 5 ratios give me 5 marks? Examiner says no. Unless and until you connect the answer of the ratio with the risk under the table. So for every ratio, you need to tell what's the risk in the ratio. So operating profit margin is 4.5 and now 6.1. Will I get 1 mark for that? No. Unless and until I tell examiner what is the risk in the operating profit margin. For example, see this. Not showing you the answer. Let's start writing the answer myself just to guide you. If I write operating profit margin, right, under the heading I'll say operating profit margin has increased from 4.5% to 6.1%. There could be a risk that expenses are understated. There could be a risk that expenses are understated and revenue is overstated. Now I get my 1 mark. You have to convert every ratio, into risk. Do everyone knows the formula of a ratio? So you know the formula, so you know operating profit margin. There are 2 things in the operating profit margin, right? Revenue, expenses. So what is ideally wrong with revenue? Is revenue understated or overstated? What ideally happens wrong with revenue? Under or over? Over. And what ideally happens with expenses? Okay, so have I put a comment of operating profit margin that it has increased and there is a possible risk that expenses are understated and revenue is overstated? Now, if I need to be more specific, I will tell examiner, look at the number 2, interest cover. You can read my answer, right? The answer has been shared with you. That is a proper answer. In the time limitation, I'm just confining my answer here, but to guide you how you take those 1 marks. interest cover. Interest cover has increased from 9 times to 12.5 times because the operating profit has increased. Has the operating profit increased? Can you see that with the operating profit margin increasing from the last year? So interest cover has increased from 9 times to 12.5 times because the operating profit has increased. Now you see the question paper. Exhibit number 3. In the exhibit number 3, can you see the operating profit rising from the last year in the screen in front of you? Right? But can you see the finance charge? Can you see the finance charge going down from the last year? So why has the interest cover changed? Firstly, because the profit has increased. Secondly, because the finance charges have gone down. So I'll tell examiner, interest cover has increased from 9 times to 12.5 times because the operating profit has increased and the finance charges has reduced, right? However, it seems that finance charges, the finance charges are understated because the company took a loan of $50 million during the year. Now, where I got this 50 million loan, that's given in the case study, if you've read the case. So does it seems a risk? Does it seems there is a risk in the interest cover that despite the fact the company took a loan of a $50 million, there is a reduction in the finance charges. So are we very sure that the finance charges are understated? So are you picking how will you get 1 mark? Will you get 1 mark for just calculating the ratio? Will you get 1 mark for just calculating the ratio? Or will you get 1 mark for calculating and commenting on the ratio? And what comment on the ratio are you doing? What are you trying to identify from the ratio? What are we trying to identify from the ratio? Can all of you respond to this question? The risk, right? So what's the formula? If I want to gain 1 mark, I will calculate the ratio and link the ratio results with associated risk. Is that 1 mark answer correct in front of your screen now? 1 mark is equal to calculate the ratio plus link the ratio results with an associated risk. And I get 1 mark. But will I do that commentary very big? See, can you see my commentary, operating profit and interest cover? Is that a big commentary? I should keep the commentary concise. I should keep the commentary concise. So is everyone attending this webinar very clear about how to take the 5 marks from analytical procedures? Okay, now see the criticism of the examiner, which you must be doing in the past papers. Right in front of your screen is now the criticism of the same question we are doing in this session. September 18, question number 1, the criticism of the examiner. See the first line. The first of these was the approach taken by some candidates to the analytical review. Now you will learn your mistakes. Examiner is saying there were some mistakes with analytical review in the September 18 question. First, calculating too many ratios, which were not then mentioned in the main body of the answer and were a waste of efforts. So examiner is saying you calculated too many ratios. How many ratios we need to calculate? How many ratios we need to calculate? 5. Examiner is saying student calculated too many ratios, which were not mentioned in the main body of the answer. Number 2 bullet number 2. Candidate should consider how many risk and calculations are likely to be needed to score full marks rather than calculate 30 plus ratios, which is a waste of time. Examiner is criticizing. That means there must be a student in the exam hall which must have calculated 30 plus ratios from September 18 answer. How many ratios we need to calculate? 5. So examiner is saying you should know how many ratios you should calculate. Number 3, a few key ratios along with the lines of those seen in the answers. How I should know which ratio should I calculate in the question paper? Examiner is saying don't need to worry about that. From where will I get to know which 5 ratios should I calculate? Examiner is saying those seen in the answers of the past question. So where will I get to know about which ratios should I be calculating? What's the source to know which ratios should I be calculating? Examiner is saying see my answers. If you see my answers, you will get to know which 5 ratios will you be calculating. Is that something difficult? To explore the examiner answers to see which 5 ratios to calculate? You can also see my answer of September 18, which I have given to you in this webinar, to see which 5 ratios to go down with. And then the last thing, look at the second last bullet, calculating ratios and then not referring to them. Will I get any marks if I calculate ratios and then not refer to them? So is everyone clear on gaining the 5 marks? So please do read my answer, which has been shared with you, which shows you the demonstration of the ratios. This is exactly the same way you will do it in the exam paper. And under the table of the ratios, you will see the commentary, which has been given for your guidance. So you can read that at your convenience after this webinar comes to the end. Okay, now comes the second part. After I have performed the analytical review, what is the next thing I have to do? How many more marks I still need to take after conducting the analytical review? I have to gain another 19 marks. Now, a big problem. Let me tell you that problem, because you will student do this problem many times in the exam paper, right? I start reading the question from the exhibit 2, which is in front of the screen, right? Now all of you can see the exhibit 2 in front of your screen. I am doing an exercise just to guide you how you take hypothetical assumptions when you are identifying the risk. You ignore the important risk and you write the least important risk in your answer. Now, just a quick scan of reading. Just keep your focus and on the screen and just going through the reading process now. The group, which is a listed company, operates in distribution and supply chain. Its operations are worldwide in more than 200 countries. So operation of this group is in like more than 200 countries. They have operations. In an exam, I see it's a listed company and I will say, okay, it is a listed company. The management has a risk of a management bias. They can manipulate the results and show the better performance. Wonderful. More than 200 countries the company operates with. So 200 country means a lot of foreign currency fluctuations, and there might be a risk with foreign currency fluctuations like an exchange rate, IS-21 exactly. So see, you are just identifying the risk from the journal introductory paragraph. You will think about a listed company and you will say, okay, this is an audit risk. You will think about 200 countries and you will say, okay, this is an audit risk. I am coming to the criticism, right? Just wait for 5 minutes. Then you go to the next line. It says, there are over 50 subsidiaries in the group, many of which are international. There are three main divisions. And I will think about three main division means IFRS 8. Should I give a segmental reporting for each of the business divisions in my notes to the account? But was the examiner telling me, can I link the risk to disclosures in this question? Can I link the risk to disclosures in this question? So if I look at the three main divisions, is there an IFRS 8 here? Is there an IFRS 8 in the sentence? But can I use IFRS 8 in this answer? No. Okay. Next paragraph. A fourth division, which focused purely on providing distribution, was established 2 years ago. So how many divisions this company have? Four. But can I comment on the IFRS 8 for the four divisions to gain marks? No. The next paragraph. In recent year, the revenue has grown steadily on in some locations where e-commerce is rapidly developing. This year, revenue is projected to decline slightly. Revenue is projected to decline slightly. Now, this is interesting. Has the operating profit margin increased from the last year? Has the OPM increased from the last year? Now see, the revenue is projected to decline slightly this year. Now, is that increasing the risk that if there is a chance that the revenue is falling and the OPM is rising, then is the expenses understated? Right? Okay, that completes the first paragraph. Then you get down to the innovation. Next paragraph. The company has invested in automating the warehouses. So has the company done a capital expenditure, invested in automating the warehouses? So I start writing I-16 and I start writing capital expenditure and I start writing everything I know about capital expenditure, just looking at a line, invested in automating the warehouse facility, right? And so on and so forth. This is such an illogical technique the student takes in exam paper that they try to identify the risk from such statements given in the case study. And when you go on the next page, can you see the note numbers given over here in the financial statement? These are the flagged risk of the questions. Examiner says if you ignore these risks and you find the risk from the situations we just discussed, it is not a good answer. Are these note numbers important? Will each of the note number give me a risk over here? Because every note number is a very specific note here. And can you see the values with the note numbers? Every value can be converted to a materiality. And perhaps every note number has an accounting treatment. So can you, yes, exactly, that's the right answer, Sumbul. That means for every note I can take 3 marks MTR. I can take the 3 marks for materiality, the treatment, and the risk. So should I give priority to the notes or should I give priority to the statements which I just read? Where is the priority of the 19 marks answer? Yes, to the notes. I should give priority to the notes, right? So just see this for your own safety. See this paragraph in front of your screen. This is the comment. This is a comment from September 18 exams. Another common mistake, I'm reading the para in front of your screen, right? Another common mistake candidate made on this requirement was to spend a lot of time discussing the speculative risk. The company operates in 200 countries. That is a speculative risk. You cannot just comment on such situations. Examiner is saying these are speculative situations. The company is listed. Speculative risk. So examiner is saying you should not do that. Candidate should instead focus on the details given in the scenario that the engagement partner thought relevant to highlight. Will the partner be more concerned with the note numbers and the risk associated with the note numbers, or will the partner be more concerned with listed companies in 200 locations? So think realistically. Will the partner be more concerned with the notes, or will the partner be more concerned with it is a listed company and they operates in 200 countries? Okay, then the next line, speculative risk do not attract credit in the examination. Have you read that very carefully? Will we get any marks for speculative risk in the exam paper? So examiner will give me any marks for speculative risk? So will I get any marks for companies listed? Will I get any marks for the company operates in 200 locations? No. And it is surprising that candidates choose to evaluate such risk when there were so many specific risks within the scenario. See this line. It is surprising that candidates choose to evaluate such risk when there were so many specific risk within the scenario. Are there specific risk in the scenario? So is this line clear to everyone? Examiner is saying it is surprising that the candidates choose the speculative risk when there was specific risk in the scenario. Just imagine how many specific risks were there. Can you see the note number 1, 2, 3? Can you see the note number 4? Can you see the note number 5? Can you see the note number 6? Can you see the note number 7? 7 specific risk. How many risk I need to make my 19 marks answer? 8. Out of the 8, I'm getting 7 in the notes. Right? So will I prioritize the 7 note numbers? Will I prioritize the 7 note numbers to take my maximum marks? So are you understanding the importance of a specific risk versus an hypothetical risk? Are you understanding the importance of writing a specific risk versus a speculative risk? The speculative risk was the one I just read, Wes. Companies listed, they operate in 200 locations. They are speculative risk, right? Because we don't have further information about them. Speculative means less information provided in the case study. When something is of less information, we take hypothetical assumptions as students in the exam paper. Is that clear with everyone? Now, just an example. Can you see the first risk over here in the question relates with goodwill? And can you see the value of the goodwill here? Can you see the value of the goodwill from the last year to this year? 970, and this year it's 1100. And is there a note number 1 for the goodwill? So can I determine the materiality of goodwill? Right? How much is the goodwill? 1100. So can you see my answer here? See this first line. See, was the examiner telling me that we have to write materiality as the first thing in the answer of audit risk? The total goodwill recognized in the group financial statement of 1100 million is highly material at 31.5% of the total assets. M. Now, can you see the note number 1 now to see what's the risk with the goodwill? Note number 1. Let's find what's wrong with the goodwill here. Goodwill relates to the group subsidiaries and is tested for impairment on annual basis. That's wonderful. Management will conduct the annual impairment review in December, but it is anticipated that no impairment will need to be recognized. Who is anticipating that there will be no need of an impairment? Who is anticipating that there is no need of impairment? Management. And do we trust management? Do we trust management anticipations? Can management anticipations be optimistic? Can management be optimistic? So the management anticipates that no impairment will need to be recognized due to anticipated growth in revenue. So what if this anticipated growth is wrongly calculated? What if this anticipated growth is wrongly estimated by the management? So is the management saying that we will recognize no impairment for goodwill? So see how I wrote my answer here? Goodwill should be subject to an impairment review on an annual basis. Accounting treatment. Management has asserted that while they will test the goodwill for impairment, they do not think that impairment will be recognized. This is based upon optimistic assumptions. See how I link the treatment with the case study. So what is the risk? Therefore, there is a risk that the goodwill is overstated. Can you see this paragraph in front of your screen, which is for a 3 marks paragraph, which has the treatment, which has the materiality, which has the link to the case study? Can you see the way of writing a 3 marks answer here? Now, something strange. I got my 3 marks, right? And I go back to the question. How much goodwill has increased from the last year? Can you see the note number 1? How much goodwill has increased from the last year? $130 million, right? $130 million, the goodwill has increased from the last year. And I go to the note number 1 back and I read the second paragraph of the note number 1. It says in March 2018, the group acquired a subsidiary. Management determination of goodwill arising on the subsidiary is given in the exhibit 4. So have the company acquired a new subsidiary during the year? How much goodwill has arisen on the new subsidiary? I go to the exhibit 4 and I see the exhibit 4. Now in the exhibit 4, it tells me that the goodwill on the new subsidiary is 100 million. That is there something strange now? How much is the goodwill on the new subsidiary? 100. How much goodwill has increased from the last year? 130. So is there something fishy and skeptical here? What is the extra 30? What is the extra 30 here? So see, the goodwill has increased by $130 million. In fact, it should have increased by 100. So should I write another risk for examiner? See this next paragraph here. Analytical review shows that the goodwill figure has increased by 130 million during the year. The goodwill relating to the acquisition is 100 million. Therefore, there appears to be an unexplained increase of goodwill of 30 million, and there is an audit risk that the goodwill is overstated. So do you all understand there is an unexplained difference of 30 million in the goodwill? Now, how many marks I get for this paragraph? 2. Because it didn't had the materiality, right? It didn't had the accounting treatment. It just have the $30 million problem. And the $30 million problem was linked with that the goodwill is overstated. So did I got an extra 2 marks for this difference of $30 million? So how many marks have I gained on goodwill? 5. That's not the end of the story. This is such a wonderful question. Can you see the working of the goodwill in front of your screen? Are there risk in the working? Is there a risk in the $100 million working, which I can highlight and take more marks? Is there a risk associated with fair values? Is there a risk associated with fair values? Yes. Is there a risk associated with contingent considerations? What if the management has used the wrong discount rate to determine the present value of the contingent consideration? Is there a risk in contingent consideration and the present value of the contingent consideration? So can the goodwill be overstated? Is there a risk in the fair value? The fair value is an estimate, right? No, but that is specific, Aaron. That is given in the case study. There is a schedule. I'm identifying a risk from a schedule, not from the statements given in the case study. So are fair values inherently risky? Is there a risk of subjectivity in the fair values? So can I find more risk from uh, the schedule of $100 million? So I have written all of that in my answer. Please do go through my answer. You will see my answer and you will see I've written all the risk with goodwill. You can score so many marks on goodwill because there are so many risks in this question which relates with goodwill. Yes, exactly, Levish, because every risk associated with goodwill was unique. One risk was impairment, unique. One risk was a difference of a $30 million, unique. One risk is with a new subsidiary, unique. So every unique risk will give you marks. Okay, then one last thing. Can you see the note number 2 on the financial statements, which is about intangible assets? Now, just clearing one confusion of Erin, uh, I see the word intangible assets in the exam, right? And I start writing about that intangible assets should be recognized and they should be amortized, etc. That means I'm going on the speculative side. But is there a note number attached to intangible asset which I can read and identify the problem rather than start to write IS 38 without reading the note number 2? So what is speculative? The speculative is that I just read the intangible asset and I start to write about IS 38. That is speculative. But should I read the note number 2 to write a proper IS 38 to make it more case specific? Right? So see what's given in the note number 2 about the intangible assets and how much intangible assets have increased from the last year. Can you see the increase in the intangible asset from the last year? How much is that? $30 million, right? Just keep that value in mind and come to the note number 2. Can you see in the note number 2 how much have they incurred on intangibles during the year? Can you just calculate the amount they've spent on note number 2 on intangibles in front of your screen? $35 million one, then 20 million another, 55 million, then another 5 million. So how much have they spent on intangibles? 60 million. How much is the movement in the intangibles from the last year? 30. So is there an unexplained difference again? And can we say the intangibles are understated? So are you understanding that how you connect the financial data with the non-financial data? Every time you get a financial statement, right, please see how much something has increased or decreased, because there could be an unexplained difference. Have you learned this unexplained difference twice in the same question? There was an unexplained difference in goodwill, right? Now there is an unexplained difference in the intangible asset. So will you keep that point in your mind attempting another exam question, identifying the unexplained differences? Right? And can you see they have been amortized over a 15-year useful life? There are three different types of intangibles. Can I amortize all intangibles on the same useful life? There is an intangible of a $35 million which is different. There is an intangible of a $20 million which is different. There is an intangible of a $5 million which is different. Can I amortize all intangibles on the same useful life? So can I say the amortization expense can be under or overstated? And are there values given of intangible? Can I identify the materiality of these values? Can I write an accounting treatment of intangible? Can I write an accounting treatment of amortization? So can I take my marks from number 2? So are you getting some sense of the structure of the answer? Now we're just into the last few minutes, right? So I just want to consolidate my discussion I had with you in the session today. Just for 1 minute, let's sum up. You will be attempting the September 18 question number 1 from this point onwards as your self practice. The answer written by myself has been shared with you for September 18 question number 1. The answer has been written in accordance with the guidance which has been given to you in the session today. But I will prefer that you do the September 18 question number 1 yourself within the time management. Try to identify as many risks as you can identify from September 18 question, and then see my answer to reconcile where you went wrong. So will you make a priority of attempting this September 18 question for your June 19 exams? And I have already mentioned in my presentation that there are two home questions which have already been shared with you. One is June 15, one is December 17. Audit risk is very important for June 19 exams, right? So you have to practice many questions of audit risk. You can see my prior webinars. In my prior webinars, I have attempted questions on audit risk many times. Please be clarified on audit risk, marking scheme, how to write an answer, how to go about answers. right? So is everyone clear on audit risk? Atika, not much important, not much important for this time. My priority says it has to be audit risk this time in your June 2019 questions. Is everyone clear on the topic we discussed today? If I can get your quick feedback over the session today as to your overall likings or dislikings of the session today. You joined the session 3 hours ago, and now 3 hours later, do you feel you have a clear picture of the risk topic, and how would you be going down and attacking this risk topic? Um, what had been your key learnings from the session today? If just go down in like 2 minutes, what was the key thing you learned from the session today? Everyone, keep it very specific. What you learned? Okay, you learned the markings. Wonderful. You learned the marking scheme again. You learned the marking, so everyone is down to markings. Okay, techniques, the drafting skills, exam techniques, planning, 4 materiality marks, 4 professional marks, no journal statements. Okay, that's wonderful. So, did you got to know the importance of reading the examiner articles, and did you got to know the importance of reading the examiner criticism? So, will this 3 hours really help you to do your self practice on audit risk just the same way we did in the session today? Because honestly, a lot of time we are so unaware of things that such a big question in front of us, so many risks in a big question, and we spoil it just by taking hypothetical assumptions, or just by taking into account the speculative risk. We spoil the answer. One thing where I would like to end this session with: when you read a case, right, there will be many things flagged by the examiner. You cannot ignore them. That is the problem we have. We ignore something flagged by the examiner and we run after minor things in the case study. You just saw the September 18 question, right? How much things were flagged by the examiner? Flagged by the examiner means something which is specific in case. So should this be my priority? And will I ignore the flagged and write the hypothetical assumptions, speculative risk, right? So please ensure you take a question number one, sit down with question number one, properly read it, properly attempt it, and you will get the best solutions of audit risk. I have tried to make a clear strategy in the 3 hours how you will be going about it. Obviously, there are limitations of times. Everything is not possible, but as a tutor, you try to choose the best in 3 hours. What best things you can guide students in a 3 hour limitation. So I hope within the constraint of these 3 hours, you got to know something which will really help you for your upcoming exams in June. We are meeting tomorrow for the day 2 of this Practice to Pass webinar for AAA being organized by ACCA Pakistan. And the agenda of the day 2 tomorrow is to work on evidence and procedures. And you will get the same deep insights of mistakes you do when you write evidence and procedures in the AAA exam paper. So you have 24 hours to brush over risk for tomorrow. And yes, the worksheet I used in the class in the session today, I'll be sharing this worksheet over the WhatsApp over the next 3 to 4 hours. Okay, thank you so much for joining live today for the day 1 of this AAA webinar. And I hope to see you over the next 4 days now, so that you can get some good learnings over the next 4 days, which can really bring you closer to success. Okay, it's time to say you goodbye. Have a nice time, and I'll see you tomorrow, same times, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. the Pakistan Standard Time for the day 2. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.